we are still in the book of Tahara, of purity, and we're speaking about the impurity of Taras. Taras, some people translate it as leprosy. It's not really leprosy, but it is a skin disease. We began it yesterday. It's a skin disease. Let's go into the chapter 2. The white hair that is a sign of impurity for Taras is not less than 2 hairs. So you get this kind of nega, affliction on your skin. And in this affliction, they can have different kind of pussy white look to it. 2 white hairs grow from it to be tsaras. 2 white hairs grow from it. How long must those white hairs be that they be considered? Long enough to be pulled out by tweezers. If one was long and the other was shorter than the measure, or one was black and one was white, right? Or one was whole below, but split into 2 above. In other words, it came out of one follicle, right? And so it appeared as 2. Or the base was black, but its top is white, the person is pure. In those instances, the person's pure. That's not 2 white hairs. Not 2 white hairs. If its base was white and the top dark, even though it was only slightly, was the slightest amount, was white, he is impure. So you go by the base, right? That's the key. 2 follicles that is coming through, and it comes out as white, even if on top of it, the top of the hair was black, right? And we're talking about, okay. So let's go into some more details. There, fine detail, chapter 2. Yeah, no, it's the right one.
Yeah, the right one.
Yeah, it's because this one, yeah, it's the right one. It's the right one. Yeah. Okay, so we're for Sunday, the first chapter of the day, which is chapter 2. Okay. When there are 2 white hairs in a blemish, even though there is black hair between them and they are scattered, one in this portion and one in another portion, they serve as a sign of impurity. Even if the blemish was exactly the size of a gris, a gris is about a size, right? That's the minimum size of the blemish. Is a gris is like like 10 cents, the size of a 10-cent piece, right? So that's for the size of the blemish, the minimal size of the blemish. The space of the black hair does not reduce its size, right? Because it's only a follicle. So you have, let's say, a dime's worth of blemish, and you have 2 white hairs coming out of there. But you also have 2 black hairs, or whatever, so you have black hairs coming. The black hairs don't diminish the size. Right. Whether the 2 hairs are in the midst of the beheret and it surrounds them, or they are at its edge, the person is impure. So the beheret is the blemish, is the skin that's turned. It's like, if like when you get a burn, got that kind of look, get a burn on your skin, right? But it's got to be different shades of white. And then it's not right. And then the white hair that grows from there. The person, so if, however, they are at its side, outside of it, if that's where it is, he is pure. So it's got to be in the midst of the beheret, of the blemish. That's where it needs to be. If they are at its side or outside of it, then the person's pure. The skin from which the 2 white hairs grow must be white in order to impart impurity. right? Remember, we said it was different kinds of shades of white. So it's got to be white where it's growing. The skin and the hair. If the two hairs originate in the midst of the blemish but lie out of it, he's impure. In other words, because it's a long piece of hair and it's lying outside of it, but the follicle is originating in the midst of the blemish, then the person's impure. If they originate outside but lie within, then they are not a sign of impurity, right? This is all, by the way, this is not leprosy as, a skin disease. This is really, as Rambam will at the end speak about, not today, but he speaks about that it is a spiritual thing that reflects itself in a physical manifestation on the skin. And the spiritual thing is speaking Lashon Hara, speaking ill, right? Speaking ill of another, of a loved one, for example, not speaking ill of of a Nazi or of Hamas, not speaking about that. Yes, that you do speak ill. Speaking about a good person, and you speak ill about them. So back in the days of the Holy Temple, that could produce this tsaras. Any shade of whiteness in the hair causes a person to be deemed impure, whether they are white as snow or very weak shade of whiteness. Since they appear white, he is impure. Again, you need the size of at least the size of a dime of the blemish. The blemish is different shades of whiteness, and the hair is different shades of whiteness. That's all called impure. White hair is not a sign of impurity unless it is inside the beheret itself. So what does imply? I mentioned this. If there was a beheret and in its midst there is a boil, burnt skin, or a bohak, a boil that was healed, a burn that was healed, and there are two white hairs in the boil, the burnt flesh, or in the bohak, that is in the midst of the blemish, they are not signs of impurity. It's like a beheret that does not have white hair, in which instance this person should be isolated. This ruling is rendered even though the beheret surrounds the boil, burnt flesh and healed boil, or burnt flesh, or a bohak, in which the two hairs were located. So the beheret is that skin, that blemish, right? That is that makes us a person impure. But if that beheret is in the midst there's a boil or burnt skin, right? And the two hairs were in that, not in the beheret, right? The beheret is the different shades of white that makes the person have leprosy together with the two, right? But here there's an additional thing. There's a third. There's the beheret, the blemish, right? There's the white hairs, two white hairs. And now here there's something else, a boil, burnt skin, a bohak, and so on. And the white hairs is in that. Those are not signs of impurity. So if it's inside there, the problem is, not the problem, but the the situation is that there is the white hair and there is a beheret. So this person, it's not 100% that this person has this skin disease called tsaras. So the person needs to be isolated for a week and see what happens to, right? And the ruling will be rendered, right? Even though the beherets are not royal, right? Why? Because the white hairs are not in the beheret, they're in the boil or the burnt skin, flesh, right? So with the boil, the burnt flesh, and the healed boil or burnt flesh or the bohaks around two hairs, they are not a sign of impurity. The beheret is like a beheret that does not have white hair, and the person should be isolated. So it becomes what's called a suffix. It's a doubt, and in that doubt, the person's isolated to see what would happen after a week. Okay? If the boil or the bahak or the burned flesh that surround are next to or divide the white hairs, disappear. Now this third element now disappeared, right? And that's the two hairs are found in the Baheret itself at the end of the first week or at the end of the second week of the isolation period. The person's declared as definitively impure. Now this person's impure because you got the two things that are necessary: the Baheret, which is the flesh that turned kind of whitish, different shades of white, and you have the two white hairs in the Baheret itself, exactly. So then, if these abnormal skin features do not disappear, you should be released from the process of inspection after the second week. Okay, now, white hair is not a sign of impurity unless the Beheret precedes the white hair. There's a whole process here. If the white hair came first and then came the Beheret, came the blemish on the skin, you're not impure. But if the Beheret came first and then came the white hair, you're impure. This can be fermented, and it turned white. It turned hair to white. Implied is that the Beheret caused it to turn white. If, however, the white hair existed before the Beheret, it is like a Beheret that does not have a sign, and the person should be isolated. But the person's still isolated in this instance. Why? Because there's a doubt here, right? By the way, well, I've taught this many times. There's a beautiful piece of Talmud that has a debate in heaven. What if there's a debate in heaven between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Kol Adam Mesifta Rekia, a heavenly debate between HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, and the heavenly divine yeshiva. That when there's a doubt, let's say you don't know which came first, right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says Tahar, and the Mesifta Rekia says Tameh, impure. They didn't know what to do, so they called upon Rabbi Bar Nachmani, who was the singular most greatest in his generation in these laws. Problem was he was alive.
Probably he was.
He was alive, right? And the angel of death couldn't kill him because he's never stopped studying Torah. So just like by King David, a rustle was made in the bushes. He drew away his focus, and he was taken away. And as he was taken away, he said, Tahar, Tahar, pure, pure. That's what the Gemara speaks. Hashem said Tahar, pure. Right. So the Rebbe goes through a whole sikha explaining how, first of all, how can you have an argument in heaven with God? And how is it you come to man to find the resolution to the argument, right? Well, how do you understand all of that? Well, we're not going to do that now. Amazing, beautiful sikha. Okay, number 7. The following rule applies when a person had a beheret which contained white hair, which caused him to be deemed definitively impure, and afterwards the beheret disappeared. I left the white hair in its place. He is then deemed pure because you need the two things in the right order. But here you only have one. Afterwards, another beheret returned to the place of the first beheret, and thus there was a white hair in its midst. This is really what the question is. So the first part that it was pure, that's obvious. But now a different beheret came to there. This hair is called entrusted hair. It is not a sign of impurity. The phrase is and it turned hair to white implies the beheret in question must cause the color of the hair to change and not another beheret. So here, Menachem, did you get it? Look, you got this beheret here, right? Two white hairs grow out of it. Okay, clear, impure. But now the beheret left, but the white hair is there. So you're pure then, right? Because you only have one of the two, right? It's not even a doubt. Not even to be isolated at that time because you need the two things, right? There has to be an issue about at least you have two things there. Yeah, when you were isolated because you had a third thing, right? Here, but now it left. A new Beheret came, but the same two white hairs were there. There's a problem there. What's the problem? That Beheret didn't cause it to become white hair. So since it didn't cause it, it does it, and the verse is saying it causes it to turn white, right? So it didn't cause it, so therefore you're not impure.
So one must perceive the other, so the other must perceive what it is.
Yeah. But the chiddush, the novelty over here, it did precede it originally, but it went away, but it's not the original, but it's not the same one. It's a different one. Wow. The phrase that turn the hair white implies the Beheret in question must cause the color of the hair to change and not another Beheret. Wow. Okay, number 8, second final. Following rules apply if a person had a Beheret, the size of a gris, right? That's a 10-cent piece again, minimum size. It contained 2 white hairs, and therefore he was deemed definitively impure. A portion half the size of a gris disappeared, and he was deemed pure because it's only now it's not the it's not the minimum size. The 2 hairs were located in the portion half the size of the gris that remained. After his half a gris returned in the place where the half that disappeared, thus there were 2 white hairs in the Beheret in the size of the gris. This is not considered a sign of impurity, for the entire Beheret must cause the color of the 2 hairs to change. Wow. So you had the dime's worth, half of it went away, but the 2 hairs are on the part that it still remained. Another half came in the original place of what left, right? Because it has to be the entire Beheret that's causing it to turn white, not half of it. So he's not impure. I'm wondering that size in that time he would though be isolated. Doesn't say. Maybe not. Okay, number 9. When a person had a Beheret, it was that half the size of a gris without any white hair of it. You only had half. And then another Beheret that was half the size of gris, which contained 1 white hair, erupted at its side, I guess connecting it to a full gris, right? The person should be isolated. Why? Because maybe a second one will grow, right? And it's going to grow. If a person had a Beheret that was half, now second case, right? If a person had a Beheret and was half the size of a gris and 1 hair inside of it, in that half, and then another Beheret that was the size of a gris, which contained 1 hair, had erupted on its side, the person should be isolated, right? Why? Because not a full Beheret caused 2 white hairs to grow, but half a Beheret caused 1 to grow times 2. That's not good enough. So the person's isolated. So it sounds to me like in the previous halacha, you wouldn't be isolated, that you were pure. But in this one, because it says you're isolated, that it becomes questionable. When a person had a Beheret that was half the size of gris, which contained 2 hairs, and then another Beheret which was half the size of gris, which contained 1 white hair, had erupted on its side, this person should be isolated. Also, because it wasn't a full Beheret that caused 2 hairs to grow, right? Which is necessary. When a person had a Beheret that was half the size of gris without any white hair inside of it, then another Beheret that was half the size of gris, which contained 2 white hairs, erupted on its side, the person should be deemed definitively pure. The rationale is that the Beheret preceded the 2 white hairs, right? Because he got half, then he got the other half, and then he got the 2. That's for sure, right? When there is a doubt whether the white hair came first or the Beheret came first, the person is deemed impure. It appears to me that this impurity is a questionable nature. Wow. Who's the Rambam passing according to?
Who's it? What?
The Rambam. Remember I told you a story of the Kodesh Baruch Hu and the heavenly yeshiva? God said it was pure, and heavenly yeshiva said it's impure. Right? Rabbi Bar Nachmani came and said pure, pure. Rambam seems to go not according to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, according to the Holy One, blessed be he. Seems like he's going according to to the heavenly yeshiva. That's what you meant.
Yeah, we said-
Heavenly yeshiva. They said impure. They said impure. And Rambam says it's impure when there's a doubt, which came first.
Still in the side of portion.
No, but how could you say that? How could you say that? But the Gemara says it doesn't say that way. The Gemara says, according to Rabbi Bar Nachmani, he was the decisive opinion, and he said pure. Rambam says it's impure. What's going on here? Okay, I'll have to come back another time for that. Amazing. Amazing. All right, folks. 6